With books closed on last week's electric round at the Nürburgring, our attention takes a turn to Tsukuba and the coming race weekend. Before we do that, though, let's have a race recap of the action that went down at the Recaro Short Ring, some updates on what's happening with the teams, and an interview for you guys. So buckle up and set the launch control. It's the Formula Forza Pre-Race Podcast by JET Motorsport.
Hello, I'm your host, Derek James, gamertag Magnum278, and I am joined, as always, by Ryan McDowell, gamertag Siphon68. Brad will not be joining us this week, but we are joined by Chris Becker, gamertag Midnight LMR. We are heading right into our Nürburgring recap from last week, and we are starting off with our pole times. FMS Senna took pole last week with a 120.526, absolutely shocking the field by nearly a second and a half to his closest competitor, FMS Top Secret from Serpent Racing with a 121.872. Bloody Kane rounded out the top three with a 121.912. In GT300, In Flames took the pole with a 130.814 for AF Corse Trecento. Johnny Two Shoes managed to qualify the brand newly debuted LMR Midnight Performance Development car with a 131.380, and BTR Villeneuve, sub-driver for Panther Motorsport, managed to put the McLaren in the third spot with a 131.544. Ryan, you have the results and a recap from last week. How did the race go?
The race was pretty epic, to be honest. We had Senna and Subway Cookies starting behind the GT300s, and they had a delayed start because of their grid penalties from GT500 doing so well in the previous race. Now, we did start at the F1 grid, so it was further back than usual, from the normal grid. But what that did is it allowed Senna to basically pass nearly all of the GT300s before they were even into the first turn. He had a couple that he still had to pass when he came around turn 2 and 3, but by turn 4, he had passed all of the GT300s and was closing in on the rest of the field. Subway Cookie, not quite so fortunate. He had an extra 1 second delayed start due to his qualifying position that's 5th on the grid for him, which set him back at a 3 second delayed penalty after the grid penalties were served. Now, what was interesting about this whole race was in the previous race, it was really tight, and everybody was quite concerned because it was a first race. We were all looking for, man, is there going to be a GT500 car taking out a GT300 car? And I think this race went off much cleaner than we saw in the first race. I mean, there were no contacts like that in the first race where, wow, just really took out somebody. But it was, a rather... It was rather good to see it kind of evolve and become a little bit more efficient as people get used to this formula. Now, In Flames then also had a grid penalty, but he didn't start behind the grid. He was able to just start a little further down in the GT300s because our UK Shadow actually took the win, but was not there this past weekend. In fact, none of the R35s were there, and it really gave a leg up to MPD, who brought out their new Ascari, and we'll get to that in just a little bit, some discussion on their new car that came out. But, In Flames basically had a pretty good showing, with Johnny Two Shoes then starting on the pole once In Flames served his grid penalty. And it was a great race for Johnny Two Shoes. He was able to just take control and be very consistent and ran a really good race. And the race in GT300 became, can In Flames catch Johnny Two Shoes? And by the end of the race, even though In Flames was running pretty good pace, Johnny Two Shoes just was really in a groove with that Ascari. And it has to be said that a lot of the drivers were driving very well, and Flames just couldn't close the gap. And by the end, it was Johnny Two Shoes that took the maiden win there for Midnight Performance Development at a key junction when they came right back on track with their Ascari after running the first race with the Weissman, and then they came back with the Ascari, and there was some question as to whether that was the right choice or not, and Johnny Two Shoes certainly silenced all those opinions when he won that race. So, bravo to Johnny for that. And Flames grabs second, and that's ZX Squid grabs third in the McLaren. So it was a really exciting race to watch. In the GT500s, you saw FMS Senna working his way right up back through the field, and I think it was by like lap 5 or lap 6, Senna was back in the front of a 30-lap race. So, yeah, clearly Senna needed more grid penalty for that. It wasn't even really a close race in GT500 for the win. What was interesting is the battle for second. We saw FMS Top Secret, Bloody Cane, and Moon Tower. Actually, it was Bloody Cane, Moon Tower, FMS Top Secret. That was the order. Running through the race, running fairly close to each other, just a couple hundred feet separating all of them. You saw Bloody Cane starting to pull away a little bit, and then disaster struck a lag spike between Bloody Cane and BTR Villeneuve, and the two of them, it looked like Bloody Cane's car went into the back of Villeneuve's, and it was near 100% damage for Kyle, that's BTR Villeneuve, in the GTR, in the the BTR GTR, I suppose, and the Lexus of Bloody Cane. I mean, that was pretty devastating to see that happen in the race, but sometimes that's how it goes. I mean, we never want to see that happen. I hate that lag is even a part of it. But sometimes, luck is not on your side in racing, and that's how it worked out for Bloody Cane. He ends up falling back quite significantly, I believe, to 5th or 6th, and it was Moon Tower then that took the second place step on the podium for the GT500s with Serpent Racing's his teammate rather, FMS Top Secret, taking third. So that was a really good showing from Serpent Racing, but it was the consistent drive of Johnny Two Shoes and Gaddis in GT300s that scored the most points over the entire weekend. Their combined efforts scored them, the absolute highest points that or out of all the teams, they got the highest points that they could possibly get. So that was really exciting to see that. It did change up some of the results, the GTRs not being in the GT300 field. The GT500 shuffled just a little bit, but really almost not worth noting, but we'll get into the points here in just a minute. All right, I'm here with Steve Molos after the Nürburgring Grand Prix short. That's the Recaro short ring for us, the second round of the Super GT in the Formula Forza 2013 championship. Steve, thanks for joining me here, and coming out of the second race, finishing 4th overall after starting 15th with a 3-second start delay. You've got to be pretty happy with the results. Tell me about your view of how the race went down and how you feel about this race.
Well, for me, I feel it was a pretty successful race. Being that I had 1 second more of a roll-off than Senna, he kind of snuck away through the GT300 field as I got stuck in between them. And I didn't catch my rhythm at first, but I gradually caught it, and I caught up to the members in my class. So, yeah, I had a pretty successful race.
Now, you finished 17 seconds adrift of Serpent Racing's Moon Tower 1 and FMS Top Secret. Do you consider them to be your stiffest competition, or I suppose if it's not them, who do you think that is?
Well, actually, I do consider them my best competition because, I compared our lap times, and once I started getting my rhythm as I passed most of my class, we were running about the same time. So I feel if I would have started without a roll-off delay, it would have been a really close race between us. But, yeah.
Any views or thoughts about the GT300 battle? I realize it's not your class, but surely you have some insights as to what's going on in the GT300 field, not just this race, but over the whole season.
Well, as far as I've noticed, Johnny Two Shoes and his team making a change to that Ascari, at first I didn't think it would be a great decision, but, the guy came first, and he held it together, and he beat Flames, one of the fastest dudes I know, so I think they had a great choice. As far as the GT300s go, Villeneuve had a little bit of a lag spike with Bloody Cane. So, there's really nothing you can do when it comes to lag. But overall, I think they had a pretty good race from the chatter.
Yeah, unfortunate to see that between Bloody Cane and Villeneuve. It certainly affected both of their races, as Bloody Cane was running second at the time. That probably would have pushed you to fifth had he not had that incident with BTR Villeneuve. Anyway, on to my last question. Any particular thoughts about looking ahead to the next race at Tsukuba? You have any predictions for where you think you'll qualify, or a realistic aim?
Well, realistically, I'm thinking that I'm going to qualify fourth because you got Senna. I mean, he just takes pole every time. And then you got Moon Tower and Top Secret in the NSX, and that car has really great acceleration out of the corners, so it's going to do really well on that track. And I'm going to take advantage of the fact that I only have 2 grid penalty points and qualify as best as I can so that I do not start off with a roll-off. So I'm predicting fourth.
Yeah, so really, so long as you finish or qualify fifth, you should be good just starting from the back of the GT500 field. Senna, on the other hand, is going to be dealing with a pretty large. I think the least he can have is a 8-second delayed start. So it'll be interesting to see whether he can make it through a field that's that tight. There's not really very many spots other than that back straight for him to make passing maneuvers safely on GT300 cars. So I think we're going to see him behind the pack for quite a ways there. Now, one kind of follow-up question to, so you're predicting, or at least aiming for fourth, which is admirable. Do you think then that you'll be out-qualifying Bloody Cane, or do you think it'll be one of the Serpent Racing guys that you'll be out-qualifying? Keeping in mind that the predicted news from Serpent Racing is that Moon Tower is going out, and that
Roadrunner.
Original driver, exactly, Roadrunner, is coming in to fill that spot. You think there'll be some learning curve for him, and maybe he's who you're out-qualifying, or do you think it's Bloody Cane?
I'm thinking, if anything, I'll be out-qualifying Bloody Cane if I can get the super going out of those turns, because since Motegi, I did a little practice with Roadrunner, and I noticed he is remarkably faster than me, about 5/10 wherever we go. So I don't think I'm going to out-qualify him. If anything, I'm going to out-qualify Bloody Cane, but it's going to be really close between us. Like the previous two, we've been within the same 10th in our laps. So, I mean, it's going to be a real close one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, here we're talking about 0.2 difference between you at this track, and he really did pull out all the stops in that SC430. Only one of 2 drivers that was in the 121s. Senna all by himself at a 125.26. So, yeah, that was pretty impressive stuff. Hey, thanks for joining us, Steven, and keep racing clean as you do.
No problem. Take it easy, Ryan.
Take us through points there, or you got anything else to say about the race?
From watching the race, we had our commentary. Johnny Godass ran very, very consistently, like robotically consistent. It was, Brad had it right in our last podcast, the Ascari. And I believe that was a great move for Midnight Performance to move to that car. It has turned out very well for them, and they got their first win in their first official drive with that car. So I would say that's impressive. Points-wise, here's how we're sitting. In GT500, FMS Senna still sits in first with his double wins at Motegi and the Nürburgring with 245 points. Sitting in second is a Subway Cookie from Bosch Tech Racing with 157. In third, FMS Top Secret from Serpent Racing with 151 points. In fourth, Moon Tower 9 points behind his teammate at 142. And in fifth, the Lexus of Bloody Cane from XPR with 125 points. In GT500 team points, Jet Vet sits at the top with 325 points. Serpent Racing not far behind with 293. And Bosch Tech Racing sits in third with 247 points. On the GT300 side of things, In Flames is at the top from AF Corse Trecento in the Ferrari F40 with 213 points. ZX Squid from HPR in the McLaren sits in second with 137 points. RRUK Shadow sits in third with 101. Johnny Two Shoes in the newly christened Ascari sits in fourth with 100 points. Hypnotic Foil sits in fifth with 95 points. In the team side of things, AF Corse Trecento sits up top with 270 points. HPR High Performance Racing in their McLaren sits in second with 221 points. And Scuderia EMR sits in third with 187 points. All right, Ryan, we have a special interview this week with our special guest. You care to start it off for us?
Absolutely. Chris Becker is with us. This is Midnight LMR. And, he got into, I'll just give a little bit of background before we let him tell his story. He got into Formula Forza leading the Midnight Performance Development team in R1 2013 and was seen as the dark horse from the beginning. I mean, we called it in the podcast at the very beginning of the season that nobody knew what Midnight Performance Development was going to do, and they did very well. So now they're coming back in Super GT and looking for similar results as what they got in the 2013 R1 season. So, Chris, can you start us off with how you heard about Formula Forza and what got you interested in starting with us?
Thanks, Ryan, and Derek, I appreciate being here. We actually were running a series of our own called the Midnight Le Mans Series. It was basically just a group of guys that I had gathered up that were looking for cleaner, longer races, wanted to get out of the lobbies, and we just kind of threw together a little season and little website and stuff, and it was fun and good. But we started hearing rumors of this, this Formula Forza, and everybody wanted to know, well, what was it? What is Toro? What is Formula Forza? What's virtual motorsports? Who's all these other guys out there? And so honestly, to make it dramatic, I just typed in Formula Forza one day and started looking around the website. I was really impressed by the professionalism, the way that it was all set up, and the attention to detail that you guys put into this and the effort behind it. And so I just signed us up, not really knowing what we were going to do right off the bat. But thankfully we were able to get involved before the start of the R1 season, and I took two of my best guys that I had been running with forever that, kind of helped me start the other series. And, Johnny was just lightning quick. He had so much potential more to go, and was just working on, consistency. And Steve is the nowadays Iceman. I mean, he's just so extremely consistent. It's unbelievable. He's not always the fastest guy out there, but he's always a threat no matter where he is. So, because, anybody can mess up, but it seems like, honestly, he really never does. So, it was just, we just kind of heard about it and just kind of went from there.
So, if you could categorize your favorite race from the 2013 season, what do you think that would be, and when do you think was the high point during the 2013 R1 season for Midnight Performance Development?
Well, obviously Mugello is, going to be the first thing that comes to mind. Anybody that's followed that season or anything that we did is going to automatically point to Mugello, because that was our first win, and also, our strongest finish overall as a team. We played a strategy, prior to it, and figured what we needed to do to ensure the placement that we wanted to have, and it just all kind of clicked and came together, and was a really, really great showing. I would say before that, it would be Motegi, because it was the first race where we got both drivers in A lobby. They both pushed very hard, and it was in the beginning of the season. I kind of called us Ferrari. I had Johnny, who was my Alonso, who was always fast, always pushing, and always just not able to get the most out of the car. He had a lot of problems with that Toyota in the first couple of races. And then we had Steve, that was my Felipe Massa. He had the potential, he had the speed at certain points, and he just was having a lot of trouble putting it together. And, then we just kind of put it together at Motegi, and from that point on, we were A lobby for the rest of the year. So I would say Motegi was the changing point, and then Mugello was kind of the cap off to the season to say, hey, we did it right by the end.
When you were looking at all these series out there, I mean, clearly a lot of people that are into organized racing know who Tora is. A lot of people know who Virtual Motorsport is. There's a couple others out there now. But when you look at Formula Forza, we do use kind of an unorthodox formula for balancing, and kind of always have. I mean, since our first season in 2011, we've done things a little bit against the grain as far as some of the elitist racers might prefer. So we have had power restrictions in R1 since the first season, and then 2012 saw the introduction of some more restriction and further regulation to try and make it a little bit closer to realism, but at the same time trying to keep some aspects. And then you see 2013, it was a huge rulebook overhaul to resolve the balancing issue. You saw transmission regulations greatly overhauled. You saw the power restriction system go to a little bit more severe of a power restriction, where you could get power restriction for just qualifying too fast. I mean, I could go into all these different rules, but a lot of these are controversial for people. How do you see these? And is this a plus to Formula Forza for you, or are you? What do you think about these?
Well, it's kind of funny, Ryan. I think that the power restriction setup and the tiering, I guess, if you would like to call it that, the balancing of the cars, I think it's absolutely genius. I mean, it is a number one way to ensure that the same guy is not going to win every single race. I mean, yes, we saw in 2013 R1, Bullen, had a very decent challenge from Alex there in the beginning of the season, but kind of ran away because of Alex, missing a few races and stuff like that. But you can still have a guy kind of run away with the season, but he's not going to run away with every race. And that's a great thing for your slower guys that, in an honest situation, they're probably never going to podium against a guy like Bullen or Alex or In Flames, without some kind of equalizer. And they get discouraged, and, after a while they'll lose that interest and they'll look for something else where they might be able to get a win here and there. So I think it's a great way to keep people interested, to mix it up, to force a strategy on those super fast guys. We saw so many times where Bullen or Alex would I hate to use the words, but sandbag a race, and push themselves off the podium in preparation for a more high-speed track that was to come down the road, and it was actually really great to see that strategy play out between the top drivers, to see that just out and out pure just breakneck speed from the slower guys who knew that, we know Bullen and Alex and In Flames are not going to try to win this race, so that means one of us can. So you'd see the underdogs just battling it out and just going crazy trying to get that win because they knew they had a shot at it. So I think versus the Tora, just, pick the fastest car you want and put the fastest guys in it and, you're probably going to win. I think this is a great formula, and you guys really did an outstanding job coming up with it.
Yeah, and to be clear on our stance, we do think that there is absolutely room out there for purist motorsport where the fastest guys win. Absolutely. I mean, in Formula One, you look at that, and there's no balancing like this, but then you end up with eras like where Schumacher's winning everything or Vettel's winning everything. So there is certainly a place out there, and we know that guys like Virtual Motorsport and Tora run good shows. So this is no knock against what they're saying. Just wanted to get Chris's opinions there on how he feels about that. It is interesting for us to see when new guys come in, how do you feel about that stuff? So thanks for your candid opinions on that stuff. How do you think you guys have done so far in the GT300s? And if you want to describe your decision to change cars from the Weissman to the Ascari, and I don't even think we have to ask whether you think that's a good idea or not, but just give us your insights on what's happened so far and then the car change.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious. I could imagine. You can tell how I feel about the car change. I was very, very much for it. Um, the Wiseman was the Wiseman was a toy. Honestly, we looked at it as such, and honestly, we just as a team we made an error in judgment. We wanted to play around. The thing was, I told my guys, they worked so hard. Steve and Johnny worked so hard at the R1 Championship to make a name for themselves, make a name for the team, and have a positive influence on the series. So, they were worn out at the end of that season. And, we joined a new club. We merged in with Le Mans Rennsport. And, they had a lot of expectations of us as we did them, and they wanted us to get more involved in Torah, which is an obligation that I went ahead and took care of so that Steve and Johnny could focus still on Formula Forza. But I kind of told them, listen, you guys worked so hard in R1, do it. You guys come up with an idea, whatever car you want to run, have fun with it. Don't put the pressure on yourselves that you put on in R1. Just have fun with this. And they came to me with the Wiseman, and I backed the decision. And I said, this is going to be tough. I hope you guys don't plan on winning because you're going to have a lot of fun with it, drifting it around corners. But it's probably going to be kind of tough to get it where you want it. And they were okay with that. Until that first race, and they just, Johnny's competitive edge and Steve, constantly wanting to do better, that got the better of them, and they said, listen, we don't want to do this anymore. We need something better. We want to win. So that's when we pulled LMR's little research club together and got a bunch of those guys together to do some testing for us, and we came out with the Ascari, and I mean the proof is in the pudding, I guess, as they say. Our first race with the car, and Johnny takes the win, and Steve just does an absolutely dominant performance, backing that up. So I strongly and hopefully believe that they will take back the team championship. I mean, they're both very comfortable in the car. They like it a lot. They're having a lot of fun with it. And the car, the Ascari, the KZ1R is just an incredible, powerhouse of a little car. So our goal is to get that first place back in the team championship again.
A question from me. Is there anything you want to see from Formula Forza in the future? Like any rules you want changed? Any series you might want to see? Anything you would want from Formula Forza in the future? Because we're always looking for feedback. And since we got this interview going, is there anything you'd like to see us do? Anything you'd like to see us change?
Good question, actually. I've been talking with Ryan on certain points. I think, which I know he's gonna roll his eyes as soon as I say this, but I think it would be completely great to see Formula Forza put together some kind of a mass endurance championship, some kind of a long distance run, whether it be feet or kilometers or time. Not to take off of any other series or what they're doing, but I think it would be great. There's other series out there, that we won't mention that do a similar thing, but there's a lot of holes in the formula, and there's a lot of debate over fairness and over equality and rulings and politics and everything else. And I think the greatest part about Formula Forza is we don't have that here. There's a rule book. And, my team's held to it, JET's held to it. Every team, every driver that gets inside of one of these cars and puts it on a track in a Formula Forza event is all held to the same exact rule book. And if you do something wrong or I do something wrong, we have to attend to it. And there's no investigations that lead nowhere and, penalties of nothing and everything else that we found in other places. And I think that's what's attracted the level and the quality of drivers that are in Formula Forza. So to make a long story short, I would love to see us put together like a WEC.
Do you any news from MPD? Anything we might see in the future? You guys coming back for whatever series we have put together for the new Forza 5 game coming in 2014? You guys going to be back for that?
Oh, absolutely. As of this point, tentatively, I would like to, I guess, make a kind of an announcement as to whether the R1 season will return. If it does, I know we're looking at an open wheel season, and I don't know exactly what our plans are for that, but if the R1 season returns, we will see a return of MPD with LMR Deftone and Johnny Two Shoes teaming back up again, and there could be a second entry with Godass and myself. So we've got some things on the horizon.
All right. Thank you, Chris, for that. It's been great interviewing you, but we are getting into our predictions for next week's race at Tsukuba, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Tsukuba. Ryan, details for this event. What are we looking at for this weekend?
Well, we're looking at a 45-lap race. And I realize this is a little bit of an unconventional track to run a race at. 45 laps on such a small circuit. The circuit's only 1.25 mile long, and we'll see the GT500s lapping it in about 50 seconds plus a little bit, but right around 50 seconds you'll see these GT500s lapping it. And the GT300s will be right around a minute, a little less than a minute, I think. I think you'll see them in the 58s in there, 59s, maybe even pole at 57. But one thing we got to look at is, yes, this track is incredibly small and would be extremely boring under single class. If this were a single class race, it would be incredibly boring. I mean, it would just be a runaway and then a train of lap down traffic. It would be terrible. Just mind-numbingly long. But I think what's gonna happen here is it's gonna be extremely exciting because of the class overtaking that's gonna occur here. It's gonna be pretty difficult for in-class passing unless mistakes are made. But it's easy to make a mistake here because you're so traction limited at almost every corner. That I think this could be a difficult one for FMS Senna to come back from. He's going to have, because he did the double win, that's a 14-place grid penalty now, and because he can't give up 14 places, he can only give up 6. That means 8 seconds minimum grid penalty, assuming he can get pole here, and this is known to be one of his least favorite tracks, so possibly we can see a different pole sitter here. I mean, legitimately a different pole sitter here, and FMS Senna starting even further back than 8 seconds. So we'll have to see how that pans out in the GT500s. I do think that this is one track that is really going to test the drivers on their consistency, because this is a track where you got to get into a groove and really not make very many mistakes. It's okay to not be so precise with your throttle. You just have to keep your car on the track and not have any significant mistakes, I'll say. If you can keep it on the track and not doing big drifts around the corners, which this track is really built for a time attack track, and a lot of drifters use this track, because it is so traction limited, it's perfect for doing drifting or sort of time attack, one lap attacking. But I think this is going to be really interesting to see whether FMS Senna can come back. Now, the first race, he finished like 34 seconds ahead, and the last race, he finished 32 seconds ahead, despite his 2-second penalty and starting at the back. So, does he have the possibility of still winning this race? I think he does. But if you listen to Senna talk at all, it sounds almost hopeless when you hear him talk. But I really do think he stands a really good chance here. He's going to have an 8-second delay, and even if that, even with the passing, it should make this a really interesting race in the GT500s. In the GT300s, I don't know. We've got In Flames now is going to start with a delay because he's going to have a 10-place grid penalty. Second twice in a row. That's 10-place grid penalty. There's only 8 in the GT300s, so he's going to have, he can only give up 7 positions, and then he'll have to serve the remaining 3 as a delayed start there. So we'll see whether In Flames can even get himself back onto the podium here. I think it's going to be difficult, but this track does favor the Ferrari a little bit. I mean, not that it doesn't favor the Ascari. I'm just saying as opposed to the power cars like the Weissman and the GTR, if we see those guys make a return, which I believe we will see a return from those guys this week, this track will favor the mechanical grip rather than the raw speed. These guys aren't going to be hitting very high top end on this track. The GT500's really only brushing, they won't even hit 140 really. I think it's going to be interesting up and down the grid, but really I think the eye is going to be on GT500 and how well they can get around the GT300s throughout the race. Chris, what are you looking forward to in this race?
Another win.
Succinct he is. All right, so Derek, what are your predictions for qualifying? Let's get the times out of the way. What do you think? GT500 and GT300, where do you think we stand?
GT500, I mean, really, who knows this week? I mean, Senna every week has been completely blowing us out of the water for our predictions. I mean, we were on the first week, but I'm going to just take a stab at GT300. We could see a 58-ish, maybe. Midfield, we should see about 1 minute and up. The front 3, 4, maybe under a minute or at the minute mark. Predictions-wise, pretty much, if Senna does get the pole this week, because it's a short track, like you said, it's pretty much the perfect storm for him to be able to get back up to the front again, because it's such a short track. Everybody's going to have to deal with the non-traction control. It's really hard to get a car going from such a slow speed at the corners on this track that you're going to see guys, kicking it out a little bit, drifting it through the corners. And if he could really keep calm and keep it under control, this is the perfect track for him to be able to make a run through and bring it back to the front of the field, battle for the win. I think the real story for this race is going to be traffic. Because it's such a short track, these GT500 cars are going to be catching up to the GT300 cars like that. It's going to be almost instantaneous, 4, 5 laps. You're going to see them coming around again, get ready to lap them. And they're really going to have to watch out when it comes to threading through traffic, because it's such a short track and it's not a very wide track. There are wide sections, the back straight and the front straight are, but in between there, the Sector 2, beginning of Sector 3, there's really no room there to go too wide. I mean, maybe in the corners you might be able to get around maybe, but corner exits here are really narrow, so it's really going to be down to how long do you want to spend behind a GT300 car, and if you're a GT300 driver, are you really willing to give up, some of your pace that lap to make room and slide off the track maybe a little bit to let one of the faster GT500 guys through so you don't hold them up? It's really going to be up to the drivers this week as to how they deal with traffic, from the GT300 and the GT500 perspective. So, in my opinion, there's definitely going to be a lot of action this week, and they're really going to have to watch out for each other on the track this week.
All right, so Chris, do you have qualifying predictions for us?
I'm going to be honest with you guys. As far as GT500 goes, we haven't really been watching them. We've been pretty focused on what we're doing. I would love, actually, would love to see FMS Top Secret do some good. I've had a chance to race with him in some other stuff before, and he's a really good guy, and he's a really quick guy, so I'd like to see him maybe take a pole or take a win, maybe here. But to stick with what I know in GT300, we've got 3 out of the 4, I would say, top guys that are all under penalties, time penalties or grid penalties, you call them. So my my challenge has gone out to my team. I want to see Steve Elmar lead Goddess. I want to see him get a win. I want to see him break his streak and take advantage of the rough passing and the other situations that are going to present themselves here, and hopefully Johnny will be able to manipulate his way through the field. But it's really, I think, going to be Steve's race to lose. He's on a very good pace. He's very comfortable on the track. He's put a lot of miles down so far. So I really would like to see him pull out a win, and maybe Johnny get his butt back all the way up to the podium. That'd be great.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned something, Derek, that you said, are the GT300 guys going to slow down, or where would they be willing to concede to the GT500s? I really don't see it unless they make a mistake. I don't see GT500s getting around GT300s until that back straight. I really don't see a spot where, maybe down into the hairpin.
Turn one, possibly.
Yeah, maybe. That back straight and then the front straight, I can see a lot of passing happening there. But I think in the midfield, they'll have to stay patient. The track is not that wide, and the GT300s are just revving the crap out of these cars, running a pretty wandering line to keep the speed up. If you don't run that fairly narrow race line here, you're significantly off the pace. So if you don't stick to that line, you're going to be in danger of losing positions. So I think the GT500s are going to have to stay patient, wait for the opportunity where they can really put the hammer down and get traction versus these GT300 cars. Because in the infield of this track, it's very difficult for the GT500s to really make. Maybe the NSXs will be able to make passes in the infield, which could be an advantage for them. But I really don't see it happening with the R34 the R35 and the Supra. Perhaps the Lexus can do the same thing, in the infield, have enough grip to pass. But it's the reason I say the NSX is they have such ridiculous launch that I think they might be able to just stay close to a GT300 and then on corner exit take the not optimal line, but give the guy a heads up, hey, I'm going to pass in here. But communication is going to be key at this track, and I think you're going to hear a lot of radio chatter during the race on passing. And I think it's going to be exciting because of that. I don't think the GT300 guys should be looking over their shoulder the whole time. I think the GT500 guys should be responsible and wait for that opportunity to pass that doesn't have such a high risk of collision if somebody gets it wrong or didn't hear you call it out or whatever. This track is really not that long. You're looking worst case, you're behind them for 30 seconds before you get to the next straight. So, I think it's going to be pretty interesting from that standpoint. And I do have to comment that I have to say that in the GT300s, I do think that MPD, despite him being a guest on our show, not trying to blow any smoke here, but I do think that they have the strongest pairing of drivers in GT300 and perhaps all of Super GT, because you look at it, nobody has scored the points that they did at the very last race, and now they're in a championship winning car as well. I'm not sure that I would have classified the Weissman as a championship winning car, but now that they're in the Ascari, that's going to be a tough team to beat. When it first came in and it was Flames and Bullen, I think you'd have had a very strong case that was a matchup that probably couldn't have been beat. But now with Bullen stepping down and we've got Killin' Mac Daddy 2 in there, props to him for being in Group A and doing as well as he did. But I don't know. I just think that MPD is probably the biggest contender now for team championship and probably the strongest offering in the entire field regardless of class. What do you think about that, Derek?
I think a valid point there. They really are in a very good position the rest of the year to take the team championship. You could say with this win that they're back, but no one can really say anything until, this week or next week or the next race, is kind of over. They might just, no offense to MPD, but who knows? It might have just been a hot streak. But if they can keep this pace up and they can keep pushing hard like they have, they definitely have a solid chance at winning the team championship and the driver championship this year. There's still enough time to make that space up to In Flames up front. They just have to make sure they drive better and more consistently than he does. They have a shot to do it. They definitely, one would say they're punching above their weight, but they have shown themselves to fight they've moved up a weight class. I would say they've definitely shown themselves to be a heavy hitter when it comes to, Super GT this season. And it's really all down to how they feel and how they feel they should perform and how much effort they put into it and how they perform on track. Like you said, there is definitely a for real 100% solid shot for them to come back and actually win it. It's all down to them.
Now, what do you think about the GTRs? If they come back, I kind of think they're going to be on the back foot here. Yes, they'll have, our UK Shadow will have less grid penalty, and BTR McNish should be nearly clear of his, or actually he will be clear of his. But we'll be looking at a track that really doesn't suit the GTR very well. They'll get up to some decent speed on that back straight, but it's not long enough.
You're definitely going to see Serpent Racing this week, giving it their best shot, because that NSX is definitely the NSX and the Lexus, maybe the Supra, but the Supra is still kind of a wide kind of, all power car.
You're talking about GT500. I'm talking about GT300, the GTRs of our UK Shadow and Bosch Tech Motorsport Group of BTR McNish and the one named Jack and what was Villeneuve's team when he subbed in.
This week, yes, the GTRs, if they are back, is still, a car that it's really only just a power car. If it was all-wheel drive, maybe you could say it was a grip car. But, since we're limited to rear-wheel drive here, it's really just a power car. And you're definitely going to see, like, Python Motorsports with BTR, Villeneuve, and, Platonic Lotus, or, maybe with the Bosch Tech guys.
ZX Squid.
Yeah. Like, I was moving on to, like, the GTRs. But they might be able, because they might have the pace to, keep up. But you're definitely going to see, like, the McLarens, the, who knows, maybe even the Weissman. But definitely... Midnight Performance is definitely going to have a shot this week, because that Ascari is a very grippy car. Even you could count the Ferrari in that group. It's a very grip-oriented car. The McLarens, yes, the Ferraris, the Ascari, pretty much everybody but the GTR and maybe the Weissman. Yes, the Weissman's a power car, but pretty much you can count out almost the three power car teams, but it's really going to be down to Scuderia, EMR, HPR, AF Corse, MPD, SMP, and Python as to who's going to win it this week. They're really going to be duking it out. These cars that are more grippy than they are speed. Who knows about the Ferraris? Definitely Python's going to bring their A game. Midnight Performance is going to bring their A game. So you really can't choose a winner right now, can you, Ryan?
Let me throw this curveball at you. We've got some team updates for you, and at Serpent Racing, Moon Tower 1 is going to stay at Serpent Racing. Now, we've been talking about the return of XPR Roadrunner for a while now, and he's been so happy with how Moon Tower has been operating, and unsure of his own schedule, he's going to leave Moon Tower in there to keep he's going to retain his seat there at Serpent Racing. Now, another change, you're going to see AVR transform quite a bit. AVR is now merging with, I guess it's more a partnership or a merger, whatever you want to call it, with XP Racing, and you're going to see Bloody Kane and Rock Lewis on the same team in GT500. So that's going to be pretty interesting. Row Racing is going to take over as captain of AVR, still managed by Rock Lewis, even though Rock Lewis will be driving for the XP Racing team as he tries to form some partnerships and collaboration there. But he'll switch entirely to the Lexus while Row Racing keeps going with the AVR Supra. Now, another change for GT500, Rebellion Racing is going to pick up Shiwoo from the V8 Supercars, and we all know he's a very strong contender. So it'll be interesting to see what Shiwoo can do in the R35 there that they have for Rebellion Racing. That's the Skolzy / runs Rebellion Racing there, and he does a good job with his team, and just looking to fill that spot with a competitive driver there. Now, the big bomb dropped here is Alex P. And for those that follow Formula Forza, you know who Alex P. is. He kind of went through a little bit of a burnout phase with Forza, and I'm not so sure that it's not still sort of there, but he has agreed to be a substitute driver for Scurry 76 on LCR. This is his old teammate from AVR back in the Mazda Cup days. So he's going to take over for Scurry 76 in the Weissman. Not the greatest car, but Alex P. is known to do some miracle work, and that could change things for GT300s. So what do you guys think about that? Alex P. coming in the Weissman for LCR, does that help their chances? It's got to help their chances for getting into Group A.
Yeah. Even if you put Alex P. in a Ford Fiesta that's got 200 horsepower, he'd still qualify in Group A. He's that good. So I would say, yes, it's a legitimate shot for them to, make it higher up into the field and actually maybe contend for a win.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think on that, Chris?
I definitely agree with you guys. I mean, Alex has proven himself as an extremely dangerous contender no matter. I mean, he could drive an upside-down go-kart with one wheel and probably still win an F1 race. He's just ridiculous. I've actually had him sub for me in F1, and his pace is unreal. So to bring him in anywhere, driving anything, definitely is a game changer for that team and for that class.
All right, guys. Well, I think we gotta kind of bring this up to a close here. Final thoughts, Derek, for Tsukuba. What do you think?
Traffic. I mean, that's really, really all you got to say. With Alex P. coming in, who knows? We might see the Weissman move farther up the field than we think it will this week. But GT300 is really going to be contended between the grip cars this week. GT500, is all up to what Senna. It's all up to Senna and what he wants to do. He is definitely, if he qualifies on pole, he's going to be at the back of the field. And this being, the only areas to pass are going to be on the back and front straight. I mean, he may have to sit and lose some time that first lap if he wants to get by him in a clean area. But, who knows? It's all up to him.
Absolutely. Okay, Chris, final thoughts?
One word, patience. There needs to be patience from the 500s and even the 300s. The guys coming up from the grid penalties, my own guy, Johnny Two Shoes, is substantially quicker than some of the back end of that field. So he's going to have to be patient as well as in flames and especially Senna. Races can be lost in one corner. We all know that. So hopefully they'll have the patience that they need to get the job done and make it a clean, if not very tight race.
Couldn't agree more. I think some of the key is going to be the final turn here. Now, this is a tricky one because of a clarification that it stems from, and I'll make this as quick as I possibly can. We have multiple people validating replays, and what we can't see is the dirty flag or not in a replay. We simply cannot see that little triangle that pops up that tells us whether it's clean or not. Now, there is a really wide rumble strip here that allows you to go all four tires off the track. Now, that means track lines are the two white lines on either side of the track. And when we validate, we must keep the car within those white lines. So what I say here is that even though the game out-of-bounds logic allows you to go onto this rumble strip, at least partially, if you stay on that rumble strip too long, you'll go dirty. If you go too early onto that rumble strip, you go dirty. But if you take it pretty naturally, you can use that rumble strip and be totally off the track, and the game still calls it clean. Well, for our validation purposes, we need something very clear. So we made the assertion to everybody a week ahead of time of qualifying that it is the white lines that you must keep your car between those white lines. 2 wheels over the white line. You can put 2 wheels off, and the technical rule is your wheels must be touching the white line. 2 wheels touching the white line or over the white line, and that is valid here. So what I was going to say, final thought, is this is going to be really tricky with who can get that last turn with as much speed as possible, taking into account that you can't take that rumble strip the way the game would allow you in sort of leaderboard mode or whatever. So I think those that get that's going to be a big benefit here, those who can figure out how to do that last turn. And I think it's going to be those grip cars. All right, well, I think that wraps it up for this week. You'll hear from us again on August 18th, or at least the podcast for August 18th. That'll be the race around Camino Viejo full. And that should be a pretty interesting race because we haven't run any championship races around there. But until then, you can catch us on Twitter at Formula Forza, or on Facebook. That's facebook.com/Formula Forza, or on our YouTube page. That's youtube.com/Formula Forza admin. Thanks for listening, guys.
See you next time, guys.
Thanks for having me, guys, and we'll see y'all later.
That'll be the SEAT Reto de Camino. That'll be the race around Camino Viejo full.
You said see it.
It's SEAT.
It's whatever. Nobody really cares. It's SEAT.
I don't think
SEAT. Nobody's gonna really care at this point of the podcast. Everybody's already turned it off because you've already talked too long.
You know what, dude?
Yeah, everybody left.
I'll kill you. I'll burn your bed.
I'll come to your house and burn it down, Magnum.